Management, NIT Warangal, I Tanmay welcome you all to the webinar series 3.2. The first two series of webinars were successful and gained huge response and appreciation. In this third series, we bring in new corporate leadership webinars from various sectors as we strongly believe that knowledge is of no use unless you put it into practice, as truly said by Anton Chekhov. We hope you all have an entrancing learning experience. After a successful execution of 10 sessions, today in this 11th session, we have Mr. Gautam Nimmagadda, founder and CEO of Quixy. Those who have queries, kindly mute or you unmute and ask, or you can post your queries in the comment section. I now request Anuvrat Parimal to introduce the speaker.
Good evening all. On behalf of School of Management NIT Warangal, I Anuvrat Parimal, MBA final year student, take a great pleasure to introduce our speaker Gautam Nimmagadda, who is going to talk to us about the topic weak versus fast. Gautam Nimmagadda has worked in the technology domain with companies of all sizes, from startup to large enterprises in India, USA, Middle East, and Africa. During the years, he has built capabilities in product ideation and building, people leadership, general operation management, sales and marketing. He holds a master degree in computer science. He realizes and has hand-on experience solving complex problems. He is now on a mission to take business SE, and hence Quixy, a no-code platform, was founded. So I welcome you, sir, on behalf of all here, and it is our great opportunity to have a knowledge sharing session from you. Now I am requesting you, sir, to initiate the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuvrat, for the kind words. And thank you, Arkat, for reaching out and giving me this opportunity to interact with all of you. So without much further ado, let me go to today's topic. So I wanted today's topic to be very contemporary and something that the younger generation would connect with. And in lines to that, I also wanted to be interactive. So if there are any questions at any point of time, I would prefer, a more interactive sessions where you can ask any question at any point of time. I'd be happy to stop and explain. Let me start with a question. When you see this topic, right, big versus fast, what comes to your mind? I'll take a couple of guesses. Okay, I'm not hearing anyone. I'm not on mute, right?
Elephant versus leopard.
Okay. Any more guesses? What comes to your mind?
Aeroplane.
Sorry, I lost you there, but I saw a comment, quality versus deadlines. Interesting. I think that person is definitely from the IT industry. So I'll just move to the next slide. What I'm trying to convey here is how big versus fast is more relevant in the business world today, right? So I've just taken a context so that you will understand what I'm trying to explain over here. After setting up the context, let us go through certain case studies. There are thousands of case studies, but I've picked 3 or 4 so that we can understand how in different kinds of businesses people have how the big versus fast worked out. I'm guessing a lot of people know who Malcolm Gladwell is. You're all business students, so I'm assuming that at least you must have heard his name. So he's written this famous book, right, David and Goliath. So in that book, he goes on to explain how the underdogs are actually at an advantage in certain areas to be able to beat the giants. So one of the things that is noted is that, in the classic David and Goliath battle, right? We all know David and Goliath. So Goliath is that giant who has who's like 10 times the human size, and I think he's half blind, but he has this massive arms, extremely strong, and then nobody's able to challenge him. Then here comes David, a young teenager, athletic, well built, but he's not very strong. He's just athletic, well built, fast, strong. So what David did was he brought in a sling. He didn't bring a big sword like his predecessors. He brought a sling to fight against Goliath, right? So, and he used that sling to defeat Goliath. So a lot of people misunderstand that Goliath or David won despite having a sling. But actually what Malcolm Gladwell actually brings forth the point is David won because of his sling, because of his size. He was able to move fast. He was able to beat Goliath from a distance. He didn't have to engage in close battle because he brought in new technology, right? It's like new technology. He brought in sling where everybody else used a sword or a spear. And he used his speed to beat Goliath. So, given that context, I'll give you one more example. I don't know how many of you can identify this picture. So at least can you, I wanted to pick a, not so common example. That's why I picked this. Can you identify which sport this is? Okay. So I can clearly,
Ice hockey.
yeah. So can you identify the event? So let me tell you. So it's a 1980 World Cup. Yeah, not there, but close. So 1980 Olympic finals, right, for ice hockey. It was between US and USSR. Russia was USSR back then. So USSR was this, all-time great team. They had these massive legends, who, that team has won 4 consecutive gold medals, and they beat, their record in that Olympics was like 170 by 40, right? So they scored 170 goals and they gave away 40 goals, and they beat the American team 10-2 or 10-3 in the earlier rounds. So in the finals, the American team beat the Russian team 4-3. And what's surprising? The American team was mostly college students, your age. They beat the legends in the biggest game of ice hockey's history. You know why they did that? Because of their speed, because they were fast in changing their tactics. Russians knew what they were doing. They knew what their game was, so they stuck to certain tactics. But the Americans improvised, and they were extremely fast. So, and that allowed them to beat. How can college kids beat a giant of a team like that? So that was a major, even a business case study for a lot of, like business schools like yours, and even young startups like us, where we try to understand what are the elements that brought this team together to challenge the odds and beat the giants. So now I'll come up with a few use cases, or case studies, where maybe some of them might be very familiar, some of them might not be familiar. So let's start with, I'm sure everybody identifies Netflix. Do you all know what Blockbuster is? Unmute, please.
It's the same kind of OTT platform, maybe.
Okay.
Where like Netflix went to, like in the initial days, Netflix, they went to Blockbuster and they were asking them to merge with them or just buy something from Netflix, but the Blockbuster they were not doing. But right now Netflix, it's in the top, and Blockbuster we all forgot Blockbuster.
So I
Okay.
think
Yeah,
just
that did
to
happen.
add, sir, Blockbuster was a brick and mortar company of what Netflix is today. So it used to sell all these videos and music stuff physically as a store, and
Sure.
Netflix came into an online market.
Sure. So yeah, I think you guys, were able to identify Blockbuster well. So Blockbuster, to add more to it, right? So Blockbuster was like the king of movie rentals. I think it started in 1985, and if they grew to about from one store, right? In 1985, it was one store in Texas, I think maybe Dallas. By 1992, there were about 3,000 stores, and I think in 1994 they got acquired for some $15 billion or 15 to $20 billion. I don't remember the exact numbers, but in that range. They got acquired in 1994. 15 to $20 billion in 1994 is big money, right? So Netflix started in 1997. What Netflix did was they came up with um, an innovative model. So streaming is something recent. I myself was a Netflix subscriber when streaming was not available even in Netflix. So what Netflix used to do was they had an online service where I could go and order the movies that I would want to watch, movies or TV series, and they would mail those DVDs. Right, I could add them to my queue, and when they would mail those DVDs to my home, so I don't have to go. It's like door delivery. So once I'm done watching, they used to give a return mailer. I used to put that back in and drop it off. And when they received the returned DVD, they would ship the next one. So what Blockbuster, in contrast, was doing was you had to go to this store, pick a CD, and check it out, and or you could buy it. And if you wouldn't return in some days, there would be a late charge, etc., etc. But Netflix kind of changed that model where they said that they don't care how long you want to keep a particular DVD. So you just pay a fixed monthly subscription fee. At a time, you will get 2, 3, 5, 10, depending upon the subscription charge. So they came up with this innovative model, and I think one of you guys did mention that Netflix did approach Blockbuster to merge their business, and they said that they would operate the online side of their business. But obviously, Blockbuster rejected their offer because they thought that Netflix was small player, and they don't even want to deal with them. And the way the story unfolded was Netflix changed their tactics quickly. They were fast, right? So that's Blockbuster was massive, big. They had all the financial muscle. They had the awesome brand value. Nobody knew Netflix. In spite of that, because of their fast tactics, innovation, agility, they were able to continue to gain market share. So Blockbuster made an attempt to catch up with Netflix. They also started an online service to ship DVDs to your home, and then they waived off those late charges, which was a big frustration to a lot of people. Right, you have to remember when you have to return the DVD, etc. But they did not go fully into that game, right? So they kind of made half measures. And I think it was 2010 or 2011, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. And we all know now Netflix continued to innovate. And so from the DVDs, it has slowly moved into full streaming service. and it has become the gold standard for full streaming service. And it has now, it's now competing at a different level. I think its valuation is now upwards of $200 billion, and Blockbuster no longer exists, right? So this amazing story of how a small company used purely through their innovation strength of speed, outbeat a huge company which was present for 15-20 years and was valued like 100 times or 1,000 times more than them, right? So Netflix was like 10, 20, 30, 40 million dollars, and Blockbuster was like 15, 20 billion dollars. Like it's 1,000 times bigger. And in spite of that, they were able to beat them, not just beat them, left them in dust. And now they're competing with more giants. So their game has changed now. So Disney and 20th Century Fox, Universal, right? These massive giants now want to compete with Netflix, right? So everybody saw that streaming businesses is the place to be. So these huge production houses actually started their own streaming services. So what did Netflix do? Netflix upped their game in spite of being like very small against these massive giants. They have started producing, I think, for the last three or four odd years. And now some of the best content comes from Netflix. They're no longer just a streaming provider, but they're one of the best content producers in the world. So so it's extremely important. What I really loved about Netflix is they saw where they were heading to, right? So they were they were ahead in the game in terms of their innovation, agility, their model against Blockbuster. But once they beat Blockbuster, they moved to streaming, and then they beat all the existing streaming players at that time, and they almost made it a monopoly before these giants came in. And when the giants come in, obviously these giants don't share their content with Netflix, right? So you only go to a streaming service because of their content. So Netflix upped their game. Now they're fighting the big game, and they've changed their tactics. They still maintain that agility in spite of becoming a $200 billion company. So speed, being fast or agile doesn't mean that you have to be small. You can always be very, very big and still be super fast, super agile, and adapt. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to take any questions, any insights, anything that you know about these companies that we just talked about. Okay. So any companies that you would know that you would consider are big but still very fast, right? So small and fast is, that's the only strength we've got, being a startup and a young company, right? That's the strength we've got. But being big and still being fast, any companies that you could think of, any businesses that you could think of? Byju's? Okay.
Tesla Motors.
Tesla. Okay. So when you give an example, so for example, Rushasri, when you say Byju's and even Vishnu, you said Byju's. So why Byju's? Would you be able to explain? How is Byju's fast? I'm not going to bite you.
Vishnu here.
Yes.
Sir, Byju's started with very minimal resources, and it also tried to break its boundaries and expand its limitations. So I think it tried to move very faster, and after 2 or 3 years, it was able to reach the global market. So I think it is going fast, and its size is so big.
So it's okay. So growing fast is one aspect, but what I meant to say was when a company is fast, right? So it's able to change their direction. It's able to innovate faster. So there are no rigid structures, which is, see, Goliath was huge, but he also couldn't move fast. Right? So he was huge. He was already big. So that's what I wanted to understand. I think Byju's is probably the biggest ed tech companies, but it's not probably not the biggest educational company in the world. So is there any reason that you would think that Byju's is big but fast? Or any example with Amazon, SpaceX, Tesla? I'll give you one example that, I love Amazon too. I love the fact that they do not stop changing themselves, right? So many people attempted to dislodge Amazon from what they were doing, and not being able to dislodge Amazon is one thing, but Amazon is actually expanding into so many other areas, and they're innovating and creating new spaces. So that's being fast in a business sense, right? So you're able to adapt, you're able to change tactics, you're able to come up with new innovative models. You don't care what others are going to think about your brand. You do what you think is right. So another example, I think a very popular example would be Apple. That Steve Jobs himself, in one of his interviews, says that Apple is the biggest startup on the planet. Right. So the way they structure their organization, the way they are ready to change status quo or challenge the status quo, for that matter, that defines the speed and the pace at which a business can alter themselves. So Apple was already huge, and I think this was 2009-ish, maybe 2009-10, when Steve Jobs gave this interview. Apple was already very big, wildly successful iPhone, and they just launched iPad, and Apple was the favorite baby for the stock market. So even at that point, he strongly believed that Apple was this largest startup in the world. So in spite of being big, you can always be fast. So the size should never constrain a business. It's all about how you structure yourself. So let me move on to the next case study. Okay, maybe a lot of you know Salesforce, but how many of you know Siebel?
So not aware of Siebel.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Not aware about the Siebel, but I know about the Salesforce.
So yeah, and you know why you are not aware? Because their market share today is 0.5%. They were a giant at a certain point. So Siebel was a CRM software company. It was one of the biggest CRM software companies in the world. It got acquired by Oracle in 2005 at about $6 billion. And their market share at that point was about 20%. But they were this on-prem software, and they were geared towards enterprise, and their business models were, they had a certain business model. But here comes Salesforce, and they say that they changed the way you would sell business software. So they said, we do only cloud. You can pick what you want. You can configure what you want. Their pricing was much more flexible. And in 2005, Salesforce, their revenue was about, let me check those numbers. Let me not give you the wrong numbers. Yeah, Salesforce revenues in 2005 were $176 million. And Oracle, Sibyl's revenue was $1.5 billion in 2005. Come 2019, Sibyl's revenue, so which now got acquired by Oracle. So the Sibyl division of Oracle has made a revenue of $160 million. From 1.5 billion, it became $160 million, and it's about 0.5% market share, and it kind of became 1/10 its size. In that same period, believe it or not, Salesforce grew from $176 million in revenue to $13 billion. So it became 75 times the size of what it was in 2005. Again, the same David Goliath, story. Sibyl, the giant, which was acquired by Oracle at $6 billion. At that point, Salesforce was still a newbie, still competing for market share. And fast forward, even by 2015, I think the writing was on the wall. Sibyl lost basically all its market share, and Salesforce was only on going upwards. And Salesforce, from being just a CRM company, became a more of a platform company. So you could, they moved into service. You could build any kind of apps on it. It was they launched a platform called Force.com. I think it's called Lightning Platform, where you'll be able to build any kinds of apps that you want, plug it into the standard offerings of Salesforce. So they've become much, much, much bigger, and they've continued to innovate, and they continue to innovate even today. So it's in the business DNA, right? So they've continued to be fast, agile, defining market instead of reacting to market. Well, Sibyl is the classic giant who fell. So just so before I go to the next case study, are there any questions? Am I going too fast? Are you guys getting the point, what I'm trying to make? Did you expect something else? Okay, thanks. So if I'm going too fast, let me know. If I was hoping that I would be able to inspire you guys to think why speed and being fast is an important quality for businesses in today's world. So that's why I'm bringing up these case studies. So if I just tell you that it's important, you would probably not connect. So these case studies, some of the case studies are very popular and known. Some of them, like the Salesforce Sibyl, is not so popular. So this next case study, on the left-hand side, you have the biggest of the hotel chains. These four are the biggest hotel brands in the world. And on the right-hand side, the fast side, you have Airbnb. So when I read this, I couldn't believe that Airbnb is now, or I think it's since a couple of years, has crossed the inventory size of Airbnb is bigger than all these largest 4 hotel chains combined. So the Airbnb had about 4 or 4.5 million inventory so inventory means listings, right? So rooms that you could stay, which was more than all of these 4 hotels combined. And so the recent study was Airbnb beat in revenue Hilton, Intercontinental, and Accor. So the only company that it needs to beat yet is Marriott. So Marriott acquired a company called Starwood, and that's why I think it was still able to pump up its revenues. Marriott itself is a it's a great company, right? So it's somehow managed to still beat Airbnb, but the pace at which Airbnb is growing, it will soon catch up with Marriott. So again, the the difference here is these massive brands. If anybody thinks of a hotel, right? So you would think of these brands. So that's the kind of brand presence that they've created. They've spent billions of dollars marketing, billions of dollars in assets, building these hotels, superbly trained staff in all of these hotels. They're top notch. Their quality is awesome. But when Airbnb came and said that, hey, we'll do the shared economy thing, right? So why should I build all of these hotels and manage, and why should one company do it? I would rather set standards, and I would let people decide what hotels are good, what listings are good. And when they came up with that shared economy model, the big brands, true to their size, couldn't adapt to that new, innovative, unorthodox business model. And Airbnb went just berserk. I think Airbnb is also valued upwards of $200 billion. Its revenue upwards of $25 billion. So, again, the same classic story, and where you see these giants. They have all the brand muscle, financial muscle. They have all the operation strength. They have all the people strength. Still not able to compete with speed, because they are not able to compete, or they're not able to adapt themselves and move fast. So that is the strength of Airbnb. So these stories really inspire startups and younger companies. We always dream of being this beating this biggest company, right? Everybody wants to be the next Microsoft or Google or Airbnb now. But they themselves were very young, and they were very fast in adapting, and that's how they were able to grow. So companies that become large and then they stop innovating, or they stop adapting to the changes, they will fall, especially in this age. We are no longer in the 20th century. 21st century is extremely different, and this decade has shown so much, or has brought in so much change in our lives, that just this 10 years probably has brought in more change than all the preceding 100 years combined. And the next 10 years will do more than that. So the speed at which things are changing is unimaginable, and which is why speed for businesses is extremely, extremely, extremely important. So I think I've stressed the point enough of how important the speed is. I'll ask you guys a couple of questions now. Okay, so let me, before I go to any other questions, would you know any other such David and Goliath stories? The big versus fast, where the fast beat the big. Any stories that you would think of? I hope I didn't bore you guys to sleep.
No, sir. I think one example that I could recollect while you were talking about Blockbuster and Netflix was Barnes and Nobles and Amazon together.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
a great example.
yeah, so both of them almost stay in line. So I don't want to elaborate on it, but yes, that is one I could recollect.
Yeah, that's a great example. Thanks, Rahul.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Any questions? I'm happy to take any questions. Have you guys ever thought of the Indigo versus Jet Airways story? It happened right under our noses. Right, so again, Indigo innovated with their operational style, their business model, their financial model, the way they would acquire inventory and the way they would maintain their inventory, their assets, the way they would train the people, the way they would market. Everything was fast. They would change tactics quickly. Jet Airways, so I think, I don't remember which year, but their chairman, Mr. Naresh Goyal, like how Blockbuster and other companies, I think he also said that the low-cost carriers will have their own market share. They cannot beat Jet. But again, we know how the story unfolded. So that's something that happened right under our noses, right? We saw it happening in the last one and a half decades. Any such interest? Yes.
Sir, I do have a question, Nikhil. Sir, as we are learning that whenever any company does change itself according to market at a very fast rate, it survives. That is the crux of the whole thing, right? So, thinking about it, I can think of cell phones. Nokia was the one which does not change itself, dependent on the old system, and it died out. But at the same time, we can take the example of Micromax, which was an Indian company, adopted Android systems, operating systems, but it still died out. I mean, it was working along with the market at the very same pace. What happened there, sir? If you could please explain it for me.
Sure.
That even though Micromax was making changes as per the market, it failed.
Sure. So for a company to be successful, for a business to be successful, speed is very important, and being able to adapt to the market is extremely important. However, that is not the only factor, right? So if your quality is shit, pardon me for using the word, but you will fail, right? Micromax phones, I think they lost out because my understanding is two factors. One, their quality couldn't match the Chinese competitors that were coming in, who not only matched the price but beat them in quality. So Micromax couldn't catch up on the quality. So Micromax was doing well up to a certain point where the Chinese cell phones were not commonly available in India. So they were competing with the Samsungs of the world, where Samsung would offer. Yes, Nikhil?
No, sir, please carry on.
So Samsung would offer certain specs, right? So a certain set of the market loves spec, 18 megapixel camera, octa-core, whatever, right? So Micromax would come up with those same numbers at probably half the price. And obviously, they were able to capture the market because they were able to innovate fast, get those products out quickly at a much, much lower price. Now, how did they get to that lower price? I did not study their case study, but they definitely achieved that. I did buy a Micromax phone once for our software testing purposes, I think 2013, 14. And that phone would heat up like nobody's business. So we basically couldn't use it. So I felt that it was poor quality, and probably the reason why they lost out. So being fast and being agile is not the only quality that is that will ensure growth and success, but it is one of the most important qualities.
Okay, and sir, I do have one more question. It is very generic in nature. Who dictates the changes any company should be making? It is the customers or the organization itself creates a need. I mean, if I take the example of Apple, Apple is something which created a need for touch screen. Before that, touch screen was not at all needed. Apple created this need. And the same example we can see with Netflix also, as you said, Netflix was the one which came out with online streaming. Before it, people were very much happy with buying or renting DVDs. And so, it is required by the company to be innovative enough, or the customers need come first whenever such changes and such agility is concerned? I hope I'm able to make myself very clear to you.
Yes, of course I understood your point. So let me phrase it this way. Would you ever know what you think would be better? Now, when I say you, I wouldn't say as an individual, but as a market. Would the market ever know what it would want in the next 10 years? I don't think so.
No, it is always a shot in the dark.
Right. So the organization. So do you think Apple was able to come up with a iPhone, a touchscreen phone in a year? They probably started working it like 3 or 4 years before that, right? They were able to envision a need that the market would love. So it's usually innovation comes from a smaller group who are able to see what would be the need for the future, especially when you're creating something, when you're creating a space. So it doesn't mean that you always have to be, if you're fast, you have to create something. You can also be fast. So if Apple came up with an iPhone, and if somebody would have come up with an operating system at that point, they would have stemmed Apple very soon, and which is what Google did. They took, I think, 2 to 3 years to kind of match Apple's quality. But in terms of market share, right, I think even today, Android is about 55, 60 market. Apple is about 20%. Where Apple's market share is the biggest.
Yeah.
So Google was also able to move very fast. So to answer your question, I think innovation and being able to create a new category, new product, a new need, I think it comes from mostly from organizations. Very, very rarely it comes from a customer demand.
Okay, and in this case, how can we decide on which idea or which innovation to spend money and on which we should not be spending money? Because just before we had this touch screen, I think BlackBerry came up with QWERTY keypad, which was successful, but only for a year or two. Just after that, we got this touchscreen thingy. So even though BlackBerry did invest in QWERTY keypad, it did not work. So how would any organization would know, I mean, if it is playing safe, that when to spend money on some innovative idea, or it is always a risk?
So as a startup, let me answer it as a startup, right? So there are thousands of things that are happening in the world, and which is why focus is extremely important. So when you're focused on building a few things, you know what's happening in that market, you know what your competitors are doing, you know what the latest research is in those areas. And by the way, Apple was not the pioneer in touchscreen. Touchscreens existed well before Apple's iPhone came out. Touchscreens were there since early 2000s, maybe.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong there.
Yeah, so Microsoft, I think, released a tablet, touchscreen tablet, early 2000s, right? So very few of us know that. So the touchscreen that they had was a resistive touch. So which means that you'll have to press for the touchscreen to detect the touch. If you remember, there were, I don't know, you wouldn't even remember, you probably were in school, but the Galaxy comes with a stylus, right? So the earlier touch screens would come with a stylus. You would have, with that stylus, like a pen, you would touch. And yeah, if you press it hard enough, it will detect the touch. But what Apple did was it brought in capacitive touch. So multi-touch, and you would be able to use more fingers at the same time, like, you know, zoom in, zoom out, pan, etc. And it would be very fluid. So it's not just being first at touch that brought Apple's success. The ability to bring the product together, and you know, Apple was a computer company, right? But if you look at it from you know, from a product point of view, but if you delve deeper, they're actually like, I don't know how many of you know their saying or caption. I think that's the right word. Think different. So they've always been this innovative company, you know, throughout their lives. That's their DNA. That's how their founders started it, and that's how they've always been, you know, creating, disrupting a market, right? Starting from their earliest Apple Computer 1 to Macintosh to, you know, then iMac, MacBooks, iPods, iPhones, iPads, you name it, right? So they've always been innovating and disrupting. So in spite of somebody else already launching some products, what they did right was they, you know, they were able to come up with innovative models. So it was a $600 or $700 phone, which in 2007, not many people would be able to afford. So they came up with a model where they would subsidize it with the carrier. So so the model was AT&T. You had to take an AT&T plan. It's like Airtel of US, and then you would pay, let's say, $80 a month for the plan, and you would be in a 2-year contract, and you would get some airtime, SMS, some data, etc. But you would also get an iPhone, right? So they came up with this innovative model. They created that desire for people to want to buy an iPhone, and they let them buy with an innovative financial model. Okay, so I'm seeing some questions in the chat. Why do you think aggressive strategies only work? Sometimes product or service do matter. Can you justify it? So this is from Vineet. Of course they do. I'm not saying that, like I said, fast is not the only thing that works. But if you're not fast, you're bound to fail. But if you're fast and you don't have anything else, also you will fail. So, but earlier set of businesses, being fast was not as important as it is today. And Rahul says that, yeah, even during the keynote in 2007, Steve Jobs said, yes, yeah, that's what they said. Yes, Microsoft launched it in 2000. Knowing the fact, so Sriram, knowing the fact that Google is able to now be a part of our lives from person waking up in the morning till the end of the day, which means it's highly successful in making its presence in the consumer life. But why do you think they couldn't make that happen with Google Pixel? So Google Pixel is the phone, right? Can somebody help me here? Okay, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so for Google, Pixel has never been a business. For them, Android is the business. Pixel is like they want to show to the rest of the manufacturers, smartphone manufacturers, on how to use Android the best. And Google themselves made that clear multiple times. I think it was called something else earlier, or maybe it was called Pixel, even when it was launched first. So for them, that is never their focus or their idea to build business. So for example, even I use Microsoft Surface. So if Microsoft were to sell Windows or Office 365 or any of their software only with their hardware, they would probably make less than 1/10 of their revenues now. So the reason why they make this Surface or any of their Surface range, right, is to show their OEMs, their other manufacturer partners, on how best somebody could make a device with that software. So that's the main reason why you wouldn't see Google Pixel in as many hands as you would see other smartphones. Google hardly markets their smartphone. So any other questions? Thanks, Priya. So I'll just give you another example. So I gave you Indigo versus Jet, right? And probably you were very young to even realize that Indigo was fighting with Jet. But you definitely know the Jio versus Airtel and Idea. I agree, Jio comes from Reliance, very big, but Jio was fast. Look at the way they were making announcements, right? So they were changing tactics every quarter, every 6 months, and Airtel and Idea were only catching up. They couldn't even catch their breath. I think now after Jio is like what, 30 odd percent market share, they're letting Airtel and Idea breathe. But they're still continuing to innovate. They're coming up with, obviously they've gotten all these investments. They're working with WhatsApp, they're working with Facebook. They've acquired, if I remember correctly, most of 2019 and 2020, they've acquired about 15 to 20 startups, and they've integrated them into Jio platform, and they've continued to innovate. You've never heard enough about Jio. It's always in the news, right? So that's the pace at which it's moving. So that's another great example of how speed plays a role. Again, speed is not the only factor. Speed plays a role. So any other questions that I can take?
Sir,
Yes,
I think more than speed, the time of a product launch is matter. I contradicting you because see, if you ask me like this, then consider the askme.com, where it has got a unique product, even though he failed because it was not right time to catch into the market. So how can you justify this, sir?
So what can you explain what Ask Me is? I don't recollect.
No, it's all it is like a service platform where it's give service to everything. Like you can book a home, rent, or anything, rented property. Like how nowadays, exactly. If you ask me, like Oyo is working.
Okay, Oyo, Airbnb, you can.
It was one of the best startup at those times, around 2005 and all. But suddenly, due to aggressive in nature, it got failed.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand what Ask Me even provided, because if I have to understand the timing of the market to answer your question, so Ask Me was similar to Oyo, which means you would be able to book a room and stay.
It was not exactly similar, but it was providing a lot more benefits to the customer. It was into the service industries.
Okay, so I will not be able to answer that specific example, but I'll just try to answer your broader question, right? How timing is extremely important.
Sure.
Timing is very, very important. Obviously, if you launch something when when there is not great reception, you should have the courage and the speed and change in tactic to be able to put that product aside and relaunch it when you think it's ready. So if somebody doesn't do that, you'll fail, right? So
yes.
if there are no takers, you'll fail. So, but if you launch and then you realize that there are no takers, you should be fast enough to be able to switch your model or pivot your product, etc. Probably that's the reason why Ask might have failed.
Fine. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So I see a question from Arvind. Tesla has only 3 to 4 models of cars and less products when compared to other companies, and still they're not even that much faster big. But still Tesla achieves more and even peak during the COVID times. Some views on that. So what do you mean they are not that much faster big? Because Tesla is probably, I think Tesla is the biggest auto company on the planet. Or if not the biggest, the second biggest auto company on the planet. They are big. They've become very, very big. And having only 3 to 4 models is one of the reasons why they're big. Because they were able to focus better, in my opinion. And Tesla, obviously they've come up with a very interesting model, right? So they didn't get into this hybrid business. There is no hybrid car in Tesla, which means it works also with battery, also with petrol or diesel. They don't have a car. So General Motors tried that. Chevrolet tried that. I think even Volkswagen tried this hybrid car. Then there is Toyota, which tried this hybrid car, but not Tesla. Tesla went electric all the way, and they came up with they rebuilt how a car, or even they didn't even think car, right? They reimagined how mobility works, how people move from one place to other, and they combined that with an innovative business model. They did not launch the affordable model until like 2 or 3 years back, the Model 3. They launched the expensive $100,000 Roadster first, right? So they demonstrated to the world that electric cars are not these small, tiny proof of concept cars. They are proper sports cars which can travel huge distances, 400 odd miles or 500 odd miles, and their acceleration or speed or the comforts that you would get would match the best of the brands. So they built the bigger models first, and financially they used those the money that came in from these much more expensive cars to fund the more affordable Model 3. So I think they were very innovative in their marketing, their financial model, and even the way they approached how automobiles or even mobility works, right? So they're I don't know if you know, but now Tesla has also launched these trucks to transport cargo, all electric. So their ability to move fast in industry is one of the important factors. And I would disagree with what you said that they're not big. They're extremely big. Any other questions? Okay, when Aircel tried to keep up the pace with the future by introducing Pocket Internet, it didn't witness the expected positive response from customers. Here, it tried to be more faster, however, not successful. So please suggest what all the factors to be considered to be more faster and successful. Okay, I don't know what Pocket Internet is because I think during the Aircel days I was not in India. I would assume it is some kind of a flexible internet package. Is that what it is? Can somebody help me here?
Sir, Sandeep here.
Yes, Sandeep.
Yeah, actually, Aircel Pocket Internet is nothing but the when they have launched the GPRS packs, so you get internet on your mobile. So that is what they branded it as Pocket Internet.
It's like internet.
It's a normal GPRS. It's a normal 2G, 3G internet that you get on your mobile.
Okay.
And the packs were relatively smaller. Like for 10 rupees, you used to get internet packs, and for while Airtel and all were charging slightly more, they used to provide it at a lesser cost. That is Pocket Internet from Aircel.
Okay, and can you also help me with when did Aircel fail?
Sorry?
So,
when did Aircel?
Yeah, so I knew that Aircel had a peak in 2010 or 11, or during that period, 11 or 12 maybe. But I don't know when they failed.
No, Aircel stopped operations in 2014 sometime.
14.
2018, sir. They have stopped operating in the year 2000.
Okay. So
No,
okay.
actually 2014 their commercial operations were closed, and then the final settlements, everything came to an end in 2018.
Okay. So I'm sorry I'll not be able to give you specifics on that Pocket Internet. Like I said, I've never read that case in it. But definitely that's a very interesting model, right? So at that time we've been able to provide at an extremely low cost and in the small market size. Samit, can I mute you?
Yeah, so sorry.
Thanks.
Sir, this side.
Yes, Vishnu.
Sir, what I wanted to ask is like, many commit to be more faster, right? So someone fails to attempt it, right? So what I am asking is how to be more faster and how to choose a correct path to be more successful.
See, being fast is in the leadership. So an organization will be fast if the team that is running that organization, it doesn't have to be the CEO only, but the entire leadership team, right? Depending upon the size of the organization. So that leadership team, the way they think will define how an organization works. So being fast is an extremely important factor, but being hasty is not good. So if you're saying what are all the other factors that are important to be successful other than being fast, then I would list out innovation. I would say quality. I think if you have extreme importance given to the quality of the product or the quality of the service that you are giving to the customer, so that will always keep you in good state. And innovation would mean that you're always creating for the future. You're not stuck with the present profit and loss. You're always working for the future. You're always trying to make the customer's experience better. You're always innovating with the not only just the products but also with the business models. How do you ensure that the ability to buy is much more easier for the customers, unlike other previous models. So let's say the cloud model, right? So it has come and broken how software is sold, how business software is sold, and that's specifically the space that we are in. So SAP was the giant in this space. At one point, Siebel was a giant. So Oracle is a giant. Now, SAP and Oracle are trying to move to cloud, right? So they have no choice but to innovate, or they'll die. So I would choose innovation, quality, and speed as three extremely important factors as a organizational DNA. Of course, financial prudence, discipline. These are more internal abilities as people that would allow the organization to prosper. I hope I was able to answer your question, Vishnu. But again, there is no set formula. If it depends upon a lot of factors, but broadly, I think these are extremely important factors. So for my organization, I would focus on these three things.
That's Sandeep here again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
I was just going through your website, and it says no code app development.
Yeah.
So can you explain that in detail? Like, what does no code app development means?
Sure, I'll do that. Let me just take this question from Anurag. So as soon as I finish that, I'll come back to you. So Sony, which was known, Sandeep, if you could please mute again. Okay. Sony, which was known for its research and development, and at a time it was making new products in few minutes. So I wouldn't say that. It responded very well and fast, and it was big too. Why is the company not at the place it was as before? Could you please explain it? It spent a lot of money in research and development. I agree. Were its business models innovative? I don't think so. Did it get? See, it failed in the smartphone business. It tried its hand there. It failed. It's failed. It has failed there. But I think still Sony is the leader in in the gaming consoles. So being able to build a great product by putting in a lot of money into research and development is not sufficient. If that were to happen, then AT&T Labs would have been the biggest company in the world, because they put in the biggest amount of money in the 70s and 80s into research. IBM would have been the biggest company in the world, right? So the ability to innovate not just in products, but the ability to innovate with business models, with financial models, with operational models, procurement, customer engagement. So being able to change tactics quickly, I think that is what keeps a giant up to speed. So sure, they build very high quality products, and Sony is known for quality. My understanding is they've probably not innovated enough in these other areas. So I hope I've answered your question, Anurag. I will take Sandeep's question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So I'll take Sandeep's question on what Quixi is. So it's a no-code platform. So when I say that it's a no-code platform, to put it into context, so business students, even if you didn't have an engineering degree, or not, forget about computer science, not even an engineering degree, right? So let's say even if you were from a sciences background or even from an arts background, we are trying to build a platform where if you knew what business process you want to, or what kind of business software you want to build, you would be able to build it without writing a single line of code. No C#, no Java, no PHP, no Python, no nothing. All you have to do is through visual development, you would be able to drag and drop and build business software. So this market is extremely fast growing. I started working on this platform about 3.5 years back. I started the company about 11 months back. So when we did our market research just before we started the company, we realized that by 2025, about 500 million apps, business apps, have to be built in this world. And there is not enough manpower or not enough software programmers to be able to build so many apps in the next 5 to 6 years. At most, the programming paradigm will allow people to build about 50 million apps, right? So but the demand is for 500 million apps because the business is changing so fast. So what these platforms allow is what would have taken 30 days or 60 days to build. We are seeing MBA students. In fact, we have a few of your alum who've joined our team here, and they're building business solutions in a day, 2 days, a week at max, right? And they come from, they're MBA students. They're not, computer science background students. So the market size is so big in this it's low code, no code space, that we are trying to innovate, and we are trying to bring in change, where we also identified kind of also the big versus fast also is relevant to us, where we advocate for speed, for a business to be able to be alive and to be able to thrive in the next 1 decade. And Quixia as a platform where we allow them to innovate, move fast. So software should not become something that limits their ability to change their business model. In fact, it should be an enabler. So we strongly believe in that, and that's what we advocate. So if you would want to know more, go to our website, talk to your seniors who are working with us. Feel free. So I think your senior, Ahad, Shivam, and Tanya.
So by the way, actually I work with Krishnapatnam Port.
How is it? Okay, interesting.
So I was just going through, and I could see Krishnapatnam Port is one of your clients. And by the way, I just a personal question: are you anyway related to Mr. Jitendra?
He's my brother.
Oh, really? I report to him actually.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, great, sir.
So you are an alum, Sandeep?
Yes, sir. 2006 to 2008 batch.
Oh, okay. So this is not just for current students, is it?
No, it is for the entire alumni also.
Okay, all right. Any other questions?
Guys, any more questions? Please feel free to ask. I guess we can go ahead. I now request Rinku Nayak to present the vote of thanks.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to place our hearty thanks to Mr. Gautam Nimmagada for your valuable time and his guidance that he has extended to all of us at this session. Today's session on big versus fast was very thoughtful, provoking. In such a short time, we came to know about many companies, including interesting case studies. Now we also understand why being fast is important in today's business world. Lastly, I would like to express our profound gratitude to our HOD ma'am and all the staff members for their presence in this webinar and for their moral support and guidance. I am happy to express vote of thanks to all the students, alumni, School of Management, NIT Warangal, and to all who attended this session and made this webinar a grand success. Thank you, one and all.
So thank you, Rinku. I'd just like to thank NIT Warangal and the NIT student body and the alumni body for giving this opportunity. I hope I was able to meaningfully contribute to your 1 hour of time that you've spent here. And thanks again for the opportunity. And especially thank you, Tanmay, for reaching out and presenting me this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, one and all. Stay home, stay safe, and have a happy weekend.
Thank you, sir.